So you talked about that you did have fun as well, and you did go out and you lived all of that. But I remember doing that too, and sometimes I would be late for work the next day, and I'd ring my boss. But your boss is your dad, so you can't even lie. You can't say you have food poisoning because we all ate the same food.
You're tuned in to Zoroverse.
Thanks for joining us today, first of all.
Thank you guys for inviting me. I'm pretty excited about this myself.
Yeah, you've joined us after munching on some biryani, and right after I do that on Sunday afternoons, I want to go straight to bed or get right into a Netflix series. So kudos to you for accommodating this one. So why don't you introduce yourself and also tell us a little bit about what drives your mind, body, and soul in this journey we call life?
So I'm Pearl Jimmy Mistry. I'm from Mumbai, India, and I've lived in the other Parsi colony my whole life. I went to school in Mumbai. I went and did my undergrad in Mumbai at a business school as well, only to be around and kind of learn and shadow my dad while understanding what the family business was about. For as far as I remember, I always wanted to be an architect. And I thought I was a girl with a plan and kind of chalking everything down, making every decision that came around, keeping that end goal in mind. So whether it was my dream schools, whether it was subjects or electives I took, but one thing leads to the other, and you kind of have to understand that the plan doesn't always work out. Things aren't always as straightforward as it can be. The company back then was known as Della Technica, after which, a couple of years later, and being in the design and architecture fraternity for a while, we rebranded it to Della Group. It was founded by my father, who was a first generation entrepreneur, and he expanded it into hospitality, real estate, tourism, adventure parks. And that's when I realized, when the decision came from me to opt into something extremely specialized as such as architecture, that I was going to be a very small part of a big group. So I decided to go ahead and pursue business. And at that age of, I think, about 18 or 19, it seemed extremely daunting. Things worked out. I got my base and foundation in college in Mumbai while I was working side by side. So 3 years of practical experience very early on made me understand what my pros and cons were, things that I enjoyed doing and things that I had no choice but to learn and get going with. I went ahead and applied to university abroad. So I went to London Business School. It was the best year of my life for my master's program. I think it taught me a lot and it really opened me up. It is an amazing feeling to be in a new place and get yourself the opportunity to really carve out your own niche and identity, because nobody knows you or knows where you're coming from. And that is something, and at that age, a little bit of an assurance that I needed. It was the first time I had achieved something entirely on my own, and I was going ahead and doing that. So I think to start off a career, it couldn't have been better. It couldn't have been more assuring, and it gave me a sense of confidence. I finished my course. I came back to India, and I've been working ever since. The irony of the whole thing being, I've been back into design. So something that I thought I had left far behind about 5 years ago is something that I'm really hands-on involved in even today, but also from a different perspective, because this time it's no longer just about design, something that I feel passionate about, something that I inherited. So that's where my heart really lies. But at the same time, I went and took it a step further and realized fundamentally my heart lied in being a big contributor to the entire business that has been set up, and kind of work together cohesively with the family in taking it forward. So that was my vision. And design at one stage in my life was a medium. So now I've been able to do a little bit of business of design, really understand things from a practical standpoint. And while all this was going on in the lockdown, be able to be a part of a new business that we're setting up. So it's an amazing feeling, because I come to a workplace that is both an institution for the past 25 years, as well as a completely brand new startup. So I'm getting a bit of both, and I'm really enjoying where I am as on today.
That sounds so exciting
Great.
and so adventurous all at the same time. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And was I right in seeing that you've gone to Hasaram Rijumal College in Bombay?
HR college, as everyone calls it. It was very funny, because when I went to university, people come with such preconceived stigmas and notions about Indians. and a lot of them don't know what Parsis are. So when I went there, the first question was, if you're from India and if you've lived there all your life, why do you speak English so fluently? So or why is your name Pearl? Like that's not even an Indian name. And then you go ahead and tell them, no, it's like a Parsi name, and like what's Parsi and what's Zoroastrianism. So it was so many questions at once. And to tell somebody you went to a college which was called HR college, but you did not do anything got to do with HR, and you went to a school that was called Bombay Scottish. Why was it a Scottish school in Mumbai? So everything was always so confusing. People always came up and understood. So I would always see, like, depending on the person and the time at hand, do I really want to explain Zoroastrianism? Do I really want to explain to them what Parsis are? And sometimes I would take that effort. Like initially, I thought it's only fair to educate as many people as I could at my own level, only to land up and having a conversation by the end of it. So what are you? So is it like more like Hindu or is it more like a Muslim? And I was like, nope, this conversation is absolutely pointless. I think you need to go home and research a little more on your own.
Was this when you were in London, right? Doing your yeah, and obviously you've grown up in Bombay, so like we've grown. Everything you just said has been our reality since the get go. But obviously for you, it was more of a um like
it,
later
it
on in
was
your
it was
life you
very
realized.
different because I've grown up in the other Parsi colony.
Yeah.
Both the schools that I went to had a great number of Parsi and Zoroastrian kids attending with me. So we've never faced that challenge. A lot of my friends already know what a Navroz is or what a Navjot is. So to go into an environment and actually understand that there are people out there that know nothing about you is a good reality and a good wake up call that we have to do things and we have to start seeking a little more about what we do. And I thought that's something that I required to do, at least with a few classmates that I could at that point.
So you mentioned that you went to HR. Let's go back a little bit to that decision that you made. And so was there a lot of people that decided at that time, like your peers, to go out of Bombay or go out of India, and you kind of decided to stay and do education?
After I finished my ICSE exams, which is an Indian curriculum, I went ahead and opted to go to an IB school. So it was a school filled with teachers from all across the world, a lot of international students as well, but still quite localized in a sense. What happened then was I started thinking very differently. I was no longer supposed to be going into the bookish route of learning things, which I absolutely loved. Everything became research oriented, everything became very practical. So that really got me excited to understand that that's what the international curriculum for any subject abroad would be. So at that point in time, most people always went to an IB school because the end goal was to go to a university abroad. So to watch maybe 90% of my class going in, to different universities and being left alone as one of the few handful people that decided to stay back at that time was very daunting. At any stage, you need to realize what your priorities are. I didn't want to go abroad for a couple of years, do my master's, and maybe 7 or 8 years later, return back completely cut off from my roots. So I wanted to be a part of the business. And the only way I could understand the business and realize where I fit into this big puzzle is if I actually got involved in it. So while I was in HR as well, which was my undergrad course, I only worked at my own firm. And back then, a lot of people told me that, it's really not the right thing to do. You need to get out there. You need to get yourself exposed to other organizations. You need to know how other firms work. You need to pick up things from there. But at that stage, I needed to realize that no matter which firm I went to, if they treated me well at that age, they were just purely going to be partial to me. So at that stage, I understood where I needed to learn and grow. And shadowing my dad at our own family business made much more sense to me. Even when I applied to university, everybody said no one's going to take somebody who's only been in their little bubble at their own workplace. But it made so much more sense because even when you write your own essay, the story and the narrative is so true because you're very honest that this is what I've worked. I've understood this is my strength. These are the parts I really want to learn and grow, which is why I'm coming to you. And when I'm done with that course, I'm very much going back. So being honest with yourself, being honest with your decision, showing that you're extremely focused about where you want to be, pays off in the long run. But it's very difficult, that being said, to not get swayed away by people's opinions or what they think or taking advice. But at the end of the day, the decision is always going to be yours, and you need to be very firm about it.
Absolutely. And it must have taken so much willpower. I mean, especially from going from an ICSE background, which is obviously something you've been groomed for right from your first grade, right from when you were 5 years old. Your mum, dad, elder siblings would be like, oh, gotta prepare for your
She's
ICSE,
the
this,
older
that, and
one.
whatever. And then immediately, once you've achieved that milestone, there's almost a bit of emptiness left in that, packed with the fact that you're then going to FYJC in HR college, which is known to be at the hub. It's a cultural melting pot for all these different people coming across from all parts of the country, really, if not just the metropolitan. Were you ever distracted or swayed away by, different ideas like dramatics, for example, or economics, or this or that? Or were you very firm that, well, college starts from 1 p.m. in the afternoon, so 8 to 12, I'm going to be at Della, and then I'm going to save 1 hour for commute, and also still enjoy the fantastic lunch right before classes?
My junior college was my IB school, so I did my 11th and 12th grade from IB. So a lot of my school friends then were actually enjoying in college, which did not absolutely give a damn about attendance. So again, then I went to a school which was like a proper school. You had to be in at a certain hour, you had assignments, things. And I had friends who were just roaming around Bombay, exploring the place and really making the most of it.
Good.
So that was one part of it. But then I took up visual arts, and everything was very architecture focused, right? So I really didn't like science much. Like, I enjoyed hearing and listening and exploring, but I did not want to study it, and I had to take on physics. So I had visual arts at a higher level. I had physics as a subject. So it was all too much back then. But in the long run, when I think about it, it's a good thing I did it, because I have a good foundation on things now. But in HR college, it was again quite a challenge, because the undergrad program, like you correctly said, ended at a certain time of the day. So post that, my friends were always, going to a new cafe or trying out a new restaurant, and I was just picking my bags and heading straight to work. And at that point in time, people didn't understand what was going on. They wouldn't understand why I couldn't just leave everything and come into someone's house for a games night, or why couldn't I just go for a movie in the middle of the day. But now that everyone started working, they often tell me that, well, now we understand where you were coming from. And in retrospect, it's a good thing you did, because now it just seems more normal and natural to you. And we're still like trying to find our place with this um, constant daily routine.
But we're still quite young in college. So do you think that maybe having the background that you have and the upbringing that you have and seeing your dad and your family as a whole, be very business minded, do you think that helped you be so earlier on? Because what we are talking at what age? Because I know college here is different sometimes in different countries. So what age were you when you were at
When I
HR?
went to
Yeah.
HR college, I was 19. So I joined in from 18, 19, 21. So that's when I kind of graduated and
Okay.
left college. And at 21 was when I landed up in London. So the course I was doing, and I don't think a lot of people know this about London Business School, but it's one of the universities that does not have an undergrad program. So as a master's student, you are the youngest person on campus, with all the other MBAs and EMBAs um, at like present on location. So a lot of my classmates had 2 and 3 years of work experience after they had finished their colleges. So they were much more older. A lot of them had worked in the stock market. A lot of them had worked in London. So people were definitely more mature. They were more experienced. So I think the decision to stay back in college in India and work alongside and really explore and shadow my dad while he was going through different things or meetings, or just handling clients, was very helpful, because it gave me a good sense. If I hadn't done what I did, I probably A, wouldn't have got into university, or B, just kind of able to fit in and understand how everything else was working out there. So I'm glad I did what I did, but it's a very different feeling to understand that you're not always going to be the smartest person in the room. So no, you're not going to be on top of everything. And there was so much to learn, because I always say that besides the curriculum and the course, I just learned so much from my friends and so much from people. You would meet someone out on a Friday night, and they've already sent in their assignment, they've gone to the gym, they're planning a hike tomorrow morning, and over the weekend they're going to head off somewhere else. And you're just like, I've still got to send mine in, and I'm going to do it once I get back home. So just to see how everyone else was doing just as much or more, because they wanted to apply for jobs as well, which was a big stress that I didn't have on. So just to understand how everybody balanced their time, how they prioritize living. It's so rare that I see people having a really good balance and mix of things. So when I saw that happening, I knew it was a possibility, and I always strived to kind of achieve that for myself as well.
So you talked about that you did have fun as well, and you did go out and you lived all of that. But I remember doing that too, and I would be late for work the next day, and I'd ring my boss. But your boss is your dad, so you can't even lie. You can't say you have food poisoning because we all ate the same food. so, so how has that been like, and how has he like maybe even go further back and be like, how has he raised you and your siblings to understand working like as together, teamwork? What kind of influence has that had?
So for my dad, he always raised us to be very independent, but at the same time, he would definitely want us always to be a part of the family business. But he says, no matter what you do, I just hope I've been able to pass on that entrepreneurial spirit within you. So even if Della isn't where you want to be tomorrow, you will be established and set up enough to start your own venture and really see it through successfully. So as far as he goes, being an entrepreneur was like number one. And the second thing was just understanding about family business. Ever since we kind of grew up, I still remember his idea is that with siblings, you should stay together as much as you can, because once everyone's grown up, you're not going to be around and you're going to miss each other. Because him and his sister didn't really live together for a good amount of years while the two of them were maybe teens or in school. So he always misses that and finds that lacuna. So I still remember when we moved into our house, we would come in and see that, oh, we we had three separate rooms, and this is exciting, and we're all going to grow up. And I think I was what, maybe 13, 14 then, so it was very exciting for me as the older sibling to get my own space. And one day we come to see how everything's progressing, and I see there are just no walls. It's one big room where three of us have to learn to live together. Until today we do. And his idea was that if you have any problems or any kind of issues with each other, you need to learn to fight it out now while you can, before it gets too big. Because as kids, your parents can get involved and just guide you and sort things out. But when you're older, it's still difficult. And I didn't understand back then. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. It was completely unfair. But now I do get it, because we're also caught up in our own day. That if we didn't have that common room to come back to, we wouldn't be as involved as we are in each other's lives, which is a good thing. But like you correctly pointed out, there are conflicts that can arise, and there's a way to address those as well. So dad would always freak out, whenever there was any sibling rivalry or father-son rivalry kind of noted in the newspaper. He would always, make sure he discusses it with us and says, look at how disgusting this is. I would never do something like this to my father, or I would never do something like this to my kids. And that constant reinforcement of just understanding where things can kind of derail, and to just be very conscious that you don't reach that path. So he's always tried to keep it together, and I think it's turned out good so far.
So do you discuss stuff on like the dining table, or do you not? Do you have like a little rule? Like, do you have a time where you can discuss business and where not? I mean, that's if you even eat together, I'm assuming.
No, no, no. We're a family that brings work home, home to work, and it's like one big jumble. But that being said, we're all very professional as well. And when we're home, we all also understand there's a certain time that we need to cut off, because there used to be certain weekends that I just could not sit in the same room with my dad without talking about work. So I know there's certain times where he wants to say something on a Sunday, and he's like, no. And I'm trying to like say something, and I'm like, no, like, let's talk about anything else. Let's talk about our friends. Let's talk about movies. Let's talk about anything besides work. But that's what tends to happen. You just so unconsciously are wired to discuss it with each other immediately, because, like you said, your boss lives in the house. So if you want to share something, that's the best time to do it while he's got your complete attention. But we're trying to find that balance of getting a good work-life balance going. Being in a family business, being an entrepreneur, it's very difficult. we're trying to launch something, so it's not easy, but at the same time it's fun because research is when we discuss at home. I'm always excited to show him something that I've seen. He's excited to share any content he's come across with the family, and it works better that way. So we were trying to find our balance, but there is clearly no distinguishing the two very starkly.
I was going to ask about your designing journey that you mentioned before. So you started off, with your plan of designing, and then you kind of did a loop round that you mentioned. If you can take us on that loop. So when did you kind of decide to steer away from it and then come back to it?
So when I decided I wasn't going to pursue architecture because of how specialized it was, a thing that I didn't share with you guys is dad has been practicing architecture for the past 25 years without being a qualified architect. So that is definitely one thing to look into and realize that tomorrow, if you do feel strongly, it's the same way that you would go ahead and design your own house without anyone questioning you whether you have that degree or not. If you're self-taught and self-learned and have a team that's technically sound to back you up and execute what you wish to do, it's not difficult. And just like anything else that you can teach yourself, design is something you can teach yourself as well. So that's why I didn't go ahead and do just that. But I was always extremely in sync with it. Maybe because I was passionate about it, maybe because we were still always doing projects. And I've always attended with my dad to understand how he gets inspired by designs, what are the things he looks out for, what are the things he learns. I kind of realized that I've learned after all these years just by listening to his conversations. So that's when I realized you don't always have to do something in the most formal route to be good at it. You can always keep your eyes, ears, environment open and be a sponge and just absorb as much as you can learn. While I came back, we aren't moving out of design. What we're doing is we're setting up concept stores. So we're setting up our flagship Della gallery, which is going to be a complete new retail experiences for home, office, and hotel furniture. That being said, we also want to venture into an e-commerce website. So that's where I come in. And that was my role when I immediately graduated and got back to get this website running, to understand the whole e-commerce ecosystem, to get the portals going, to get the softwares integrated, and really get into the business of the whole thing and not purely just design. While that used to happen, if there were any client meetings that I was overhearing, because I had this habit in the start as well of always wanting to work out of my dad's cabin. So I'm always being able to hear any conversations he's having with people that I can kind of quickly, weave my way in and be a part of, which we still do till today, even though I have my own independent roles. And one thing led to the other. I would always be like, this is a new product that's coming, this would go great, or maybe this is something nice that you might like in your mood board. So it was like these small things that I started weaving my way back in. While I was doing and in charge of all the cataloging, I was that one person who was the repository of everything and all the designs that the organization was doing. So that obviously gave me a better edge over anybody else to kind of comment and see and put things together. So while that happened, while I was looking into sales and closing deals for residences or office spaces, the client kind of has a bond with you. And by the end of it, it's a little understood that they want you on the project. So that's how I started getting into these projects. And while it was initially just kind of being a little design assistant to my dad while he did the site visits, it went a little more from that into actually designing, taking charge of a team. And now I have projects that I'm independently looking into. Unknowingly, I just ventured back into it. And now that I'm in it, I really enjoy it. We go to our factory in Damman, which is very close to Udvada. So my brother Farhan and I spend about every week in Damman for 2 or 3 days. It's amazing because we get to be in Udvada. It feels great. So to know that there's so much you can learn on the shop floor by itself, if you're willing to, is a great thing.
And so you go to Udwada a lot, obviously, and then near that, Daman. Um, so in terms of taking it into the community slightly, you've talked a lot about obviously the importance, the differences now between the community, let's say here, there, and also about your involvement with like WZCC. And something that you said that I really liked was like the importance of our community showing up and being present. And so how when you have time, because you're very busy, um what's that side of Pearl's life like? How do you manage the both of them, and your involvement in that?
Growing up, even though I was very much in the heart of Parsi colony, I wasn't very community inclined to do anything. But what happened at that turn is dad started an NGO by the name of Parsi Resource Group, which was predominantly to attract the youth, to start getting them involved in the community aspect of things, as well as a whole chunk dedicated to looking after the morbaids of our community, because he always feels that if the morbaids are not taken care of, if they're not given the level of respect and admiration that, just for instance, a pope is given, the way someone treats a pope, and then it's so sad to see the way we treat our morbaids. So that was why the entire Parsi Resource Group was set up, to look after these morbaids, to ensure that our religion is sustained through the next couple of decades. Just up until when I landed up in LA for the Youth Congress last year is when a lot of the things changed. Just before I went to the Youth Congress, I got involved with WZCC. The involvement also resulted in being introduced, saying that okay, Pearl's also going to be coming for the Congress, so to just get introduced to the other people who are also going to be present there from Mumbai. And that's how they introduced me to WZCC and the youth team and what they were doing. And I got really excited. And I said, okay, I'll get involved in a little bit that we can. I helped them, with the Shark Tank event. We did an amazing networking with 500 people. So for the first time, it was 500 young people purely talking about business, their careers, their ambitions, how they can give to one another, and what they wish to take back and learn. So it was really nice. It was very great knowing that I could create such an impact, and it's something that I enjoyed doing. It wasn't just organizing yet another party or a festival or something with no meaning at the end of it. While that kept going on, during one of the panel events, somebody asked me what I kind of just noticed, and I realized that even though India and Mumbai has the largest population of the youngest Parsis and Zoroastrians, no one showed up to the Congress, not even the people who could. And a lot of them that were even offered kind of like scholarships of sorts to be a part of it, or even just given an option to be funded, didn't want to go ahead and take it. So that's what got me thinking, because on one hand, I'm hearing people from Hong Kong, from Australia, from New Zealand talk about how extremely involved they are at this age with community service. And there I saw everybody back home that just thought the entire Congress itself was a big waste of time. So I just realized that what was the main differentiating factor is we're all waiting to do something. And I realized the first step was just get involved and start with something small. We're often waiting to come up with that brilliant idea, or we're always underestimating ourselves, saying what we do or what we can give back is not as good. But every little effort really counts, and along the way, you're just going to realize cumulatively how much impact you've caused in the community, which is why I continued my association with WZCC. I tried to get more involved. I was happy to be talking on Fezana's panel. I love seeing what they're always doing, and realizing that our community can be interesting. It's not just boring lectures on religion. It's not just gatherings with old people where the average age is about 55, 60. There is so much more the youth can do. And I'm taking it on myself as well to personally try as much as I can in my own capacity to keep giving back. We, like you said, that you're always busy, everyone's always busy, but we always land up making time for a party, we always land up making time to go visit a friend, we make time to go travel. So even giving back to the community is something that you have to really just allocate some time and do and get on with it, because if you're going to leave it for when you're successful, or when you've established yourself, or when you've done something too great, it's going to be extremely late.
Exactly.
So
Have you seen that change? Have you seen that change in the, I guess, the Mumbai or the Indian community recently, like in the year since? And
yes, I feel a lot of people are getting involved, and there are amazing organizations that are doing great work. They all have different aims, right? So somebody is focusing purely on kind of getting the young people to network so they get hitched. And there are a couple of people that are just trying to spread knowledge and awareness about the religion, and the others that are trying to get people to have business benefits with the whole thing, which is something like what WZCC is doing. So you have wide options to decide what you want to do and get involved. It can be something as nice as sports. It can be something as nice as dancing and singing competitions and festivals. So a lot of things are happening. People are getting involved, but I definitely think there's room for a lot more and a lot more giving back from everybody in their own individual capacity.
So interesting. So if we're just gonna ask you final question, you have had a really kind of clear outlook from the get go. Um, not all people have that growing up. Some people can even be in their late 20s and still figuring out where they want to take stuff. Sometimes not only because they don't know what to do, but because they want to do a lot of things. It's not always because we don't know. What would your advice be on just generally people who might be listening to navigate that journey? How have you navigated and shut out the advice that was just given because people love giving advice, and then the actual advice that comes your way that you go back home and you think about and you're like, yeah, that person actually meant like that came, yeah, that was from the heart, and that was from the mouth. So how, like, what kind of tips would you give someone?
So the person you were describing sounds exactly like me, someone who wants to do too much, someone who can get swayed away by too many opinions. But growing up, I realized that I had to start understanding and differentiating advice into the right categories. Sometimes people mean good, but they themselves don't know what they're saying beyond a point. So just to give you that instance, somebody just out of good faith saying that no, go work in another company, learn this from here, learn that from there, and just get a good experience and about life. If I went ahead and did that, and say I picked up a job in London after my graduation, I would have come back home extremely frustrated because both the work cultures in India and in the UK are very different. It would have really not helped me in any way, and those are things that I had to critically come and derive and come to that conclusion on my own. One advice I would give is at the end of the day, make sure you do what's your decision. So don't ever do something and be like, if it goes right or if it goes wrong, I'm giving credit to someone else, because that's the worst thing you can do. So just be very careful about the kind of advice you get. Be a critical thinker. Start understanding early on people that have your best interests at heart. And trust me, it starts from home. People at home always have your best interests at heart. So if you're ever confused and there's any like advice or you're torn between two things, what the family has to say is keeping you in the middle of it, even if they don't know the whole picture. So that would be one part of it. The second thing being, it's okay to like not be okay and figure things out. So there's not always going to be a right path, and you just have to be patient and you have to just be honest. So don't get defensive, don't cut yourself off and stop taking advice from people because you need that. But just know at the end of the day that it's okay, and you always have time to figure and explore what you're doing, so long as you're not kind of stupidly wasting it.
Thank you
Absolutely
so much.
fantastic.
That's
Yeah,
great.
thank you so much. That's great advice. Like,
Thank
love yourself, trust your family, and trust that you'll make mistakes and learn from them. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Pearl.
Thank
Like,
you
it's
so
been
much.
such a pleasure talking with you. Yeah.
That's a wrap from Pearl Jimmy Mistry. I really want to go ahead and thank the entire team of Zoroverse for giving me this platform to talk and share my stories, my learnings, my failures, and hopefully inspire you guys to go ahead and take that plunge. It's very difficult. It's sometimes things are daunting when you want to do something but just don't know how to get into it. There's never going to be a right time. There's never going to be a right thing. So my immediate advice to you would be just start, believe in yourself, really make the most of the support you get from your family and your friends as well. And you have a great road to success ahead of you. Thank you, Sherry, for getting in touch. Thank you, Shazeen. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Ryan. And I hope to really be able to meet you guys very soon in the UK. And take care. See you.
The London Congress.
Yeah, the London Congress.
Thank you so much, Pearl.
And for those of you joining us, whether it's morning, afternoon, evening, or twilight, remember that Zoroverse is always here to discover the conversation.
You're tuned in to Zoroverse.